Hi everyone. I know it's been a few years since my last update, but I wanted to take the opportunity to share my personal story that ultimately changed my life forever. In January 2024, I had an emergency brain surgery. Yeah, definitely did not expect that one in my lifetime. Let's start with my move to the East Coast in June 2021. When my brother announced he would be moving his family to Connecticut, I felt like maybe this would be an opportunity to take on my own new adventure. So I joined them in their move. I put a deposit down on a room near their home in May of 2021, quit my job, and prepared to start a new life near my family. My main motive was to stay close to my young nieces and nephews who I'd grown extremely close to while living in Utah. So at the end of June, I packed up my Honda CR-V with all of my belongings and drove across the country to start my new life. However, things did not pan out the way that I'd planned. Once I got to Connecticut, the lady I had put down a deposit for a room told me the current tenant was refusing to leave, and there was nothing she could do due to the COVID eviction laws that were in place. So while my brother had bought a home down the street from his wife's parents' house, they had a ton of renovations to take on to modernize the house and would be living with his wife's parents in the meantime, and I wasn't able to live there. So I was living in a hotel room for about a week when one of my childhood best friends offered to let me temporarily stay with them on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, which was about 2.5 hours away, until the room I put a deposit down for became available. Once I got to Massachusetts, I was waiting for the room to open up, and I was so excited to begin this new journey. I moved into my best friend's home, waiting for the room in Connecticut to become available. But fast forward to October, I applied for a job at a dental office and got the job. So let's jump to when I had unending headaches that started towards the end of December 2023. This is when things got extremely scary. It was Christmas, and I went to Connecticut to celebrate with my brother and his family, and the first terrifying thing was on Christmas. I didn't remember a lot of that day. The first red flag was that I didn't remember much that happened. On the drive home, my now ex-boyfriend asked about the gifts that he gave me, and I didn't remember anything he'd given me for Christmas. I also had a hard time remembering the gifts that I'd given to my family members. And initially I chalked it up to not remembering things because of some kind of trauma or something, but this is when the headaches really started to kick in, just debilitating me from working and living a normal life. Now it's January, and things are progressively getting worse. I was working front desk at a doctor's office, and the headaches were so bad that I would just stare at my computer screen and do the bare minimum just to get through my shift. On January 2nd, my office manager drove me to the ER in the middle of my shift, where I waited 4+ hours to be seen, and eventually I was roomed, and they didn't really do anything or take me seriously. I was discharged with a prescription for migraines, but those weren't working because I wasn't having a quote-unquote normal migraine. Then on January 9th, I did testing for my ADHD and attentive type, and they didn't ask me if I was having any headaches before the testing, which I guess they're supposed to do. I had waited almost 8 to 9 months for this appointment, and in a way it was probably a good thing that they didn't ask about the headaches, because who knows how much longer I would have had to wait to get another appointment. I've had inattentive type ADD since I was a child, first diagnosed around age 9 or 10 and prescribed Adderall pretty much my entire life. I was 34 years old, and the last time I had testing was when I was 22 and living in Washington State. And since I was in a new part of the country, and because ADD meds are so overprescribed now, I had a really hard time getting my prescriptions, which I never had issues with before moving to the East Coast. The results of the testing were not great. My last test, when I was 22, was I had around 115 IQ, whereas this most recent one was close to an 80 IQ. And this absolutely devastated me. But once I learned that I had a brain mass, it was slightly comforting to know why there was such a drastic drop. On January 16th, I was once again staring at my computer screen, just trying to get to the end of my shift, and my coworker was not being too kind, complaining to our office manager about my work performance. And after I got off work, I just decided to return to the ER, where they actually did a CT scan this time and found a brain lesion in the foramen of Monro, which is basically the center of my brain, and an extremely rare spot for one to be found. I had to stay in the ER until they were able to get an ambulance to drive me up to Boston, which was almost a 24-hour wait. I was taken to the neurosurgery wing. They did an MRI scan, had me do a few tests like walking in a straight line, which I failed miserably. And the neurosurgeon decided, based on the location causing hydrocephalus, the best course of action would be to perform surgery to implant a permanent VP shunt placed in my brain to drain the fluid buildup into my belly. I spent about a week in the hospital. First, they put in a temporary shunt, and then they put in a permanent one that I will have for the rest of my life. And according to my research, only 15 cases of a cavernous malformation in the foramen of Monro have been reported, so this is an extremely rare case. Also, just a side note, the MRIs also revealed that I apparently have a cyst on my pituitary gland, so that's great. But on top of all the trauma, PTSD, and recovery from my surgery, my grandmother was diagnosed with terminal cancer just a few months after my whole ordeal. She only had a couple months left to live, and in August, I was able to take a trip to see her one last time, and just about a week later, she passed away the first week of September, surrounded by family. Needless to say, this year has been very traumatic for me. I'm amazed that I'm still alive, because if I hadn't returned to the ER, I was very close to death from the hydrocephalus. Not only that, but the fact I live close to Boston, which has some of the best neurosurgeons in the world. I was very lucky to get the life-saving treatment. Before returning to the ER, I had messaged my primary care doctor asking what my next step should be, because things were worsening at a rapid rate. And my message was left on read for maybe a week, and I never got a response. But after I was admitted to the ER again, my primary care team was notified, and she called me to apologize for not getting back to me. And I mention this because I think it's important to let people know sometimes you need to follow your gut if something isn't right. As I approach the 1-year mark of my brain surgery at the end of 2024, I want to share that if I hadn't returned to the ER, I very well could have met my end at the young age of 34. I was not taken seriously. I had additional stress from my workplace environment, not showing compassion, after I'd been there for nearly 2 years, and I have experienced so much loss throughout this whole ordeal. I know it's been a while since my last video, but I thought it was important to share my story and let everyone know where I've been. I also wanted to share that shortly after arriving to visit my grandmother for the last time, I received an email that my job was no longer holding my position and I was let go from the company. I am financially struggling with all of my medical bills and just basic living expenses. So if you are in a place to donate, I will provide links in the description below where you can contribute if you're able to, just because anything helps and is greatly appreciated during this time. If you have any questions, feel free to leave comments. I would love to answer anything I can, or hear stories similar to mine. Brain surgery or not, you know, it's traumatic to have an unexpected surgery like that, and I think it's good to talk about with other people. So please feel free to share your story, and thank you for listening to mine. I hope everyone has a wonderful Christmas and holiday season as we welcome in the new year of 2025. I'll be heading to visit my brother in Connecticut to meet my newest nephew, who was just born last week, and I'm so excited. So, something I'm looking forward to. But anyways, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. I hope everyone is doing well, and cross your fingers that 2025 is much better than 2024. All right. Thank you for listening, and yeah, that's about it. Bye.